First off, welcome. Goddamn it, welcome. Where you at? You ready?
This is the Bernie's Daughter Podcast.
I ain't scared of you, motherfucker.
The show where you get a front row seat to the magic,
Where you at?
humor, and wisdom of the late, great Bernie Mac, as seen through the eyes of his loving daughter.
I don't care about you talking about me.
And his famous friends.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Bernie's Daughter Podcast. I am your host, Janice McCullough, mostly known to y'all as Bernie's Daughter, because y'all know y'all don't say my name. But today, I'm so excited. We have an amazing award-winning actress who has been acting since she was just a wee little one. She's so multi-talented, and you all most know her as the beloved Vanessa, aka Nessa Tompkins, on my dad's eponymous sitcom, The Bernie Mac Show. Please welcome Camille Winbush.
Hello.
It's so good to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you for having me.
No, thank you. Listen, you can't talk about my dad without talking about the show and all of you all, because you guys had such an amazing chemistry. So there's no way I could do this and not have you on here. It just wouldn't work. But speaking of the show, because I don't even think people realize how young you were when you started on the show.
Yeah.
Like, what was it like auditioning? Because I know your parents. I know you ain't know nothing about who my father was before.
I do not.
Not Tony and Alice. No. Well, I know they didn't. So when you were auditioning, of course you had no idea that you were auditioning for this show with this larger than life, person. But what was it like once you got to meet him and go through the audition process?
So I didn't know Bernie before the audition because I was like 9, 10 at the time. But my parents showed me a clip of his stand-up just so I could get an idea of who he was. And I went through the audition process. And as it got towards the end, when it was narrowed down to me and 2 other girls, I got to meet Bernie and actually do a scene with him. And I wasn't intimidated just because I already knew like he was going to be bringing the heat, but I got to play off of his energy, and we just had really good comedic vibes from each other, and the rest is history.
It sure is. Like, you guys, I always tell you guys, y'all were your own little set of family, because for those years, y'all saw him more than we did. Like, even though he called home incessantly, but still, you all were together all the time. And it showed just how much chemistry that you all had on and off the set. Because I know how my dad was. My dad was hey, we are a family. Everybody, we do these things together. We remember Friday nights. I know you were too young. Your parents were probably like, you had to go. But, Friday nights, we bump and grind, and he'd order food and have people partying. So, yeah, it definitely showed on film. And I'm not biased at all. I think the show was great, but I'm not biased at all. So when you got the role, do you remember how you felt when you found out that you got the role of Vanessa?
I was excited, but I started acting when I was 2. So growing up in the industry, I've trained myself to not get too excited, because you never know what can happen with a job, So I was like, all right, cool. I'm working. Yes. But I had no idea the impact the show would have and how popular it would be. Even now, I wasn't thinking that far ahead. So I was just grateful to be working and to be working with such a huge, celebrity. It was exciting.
That's awesome. Like, so a lot of people don't know, my dad loved kids. I mean, he loved kids. He used to coach Little League basketball when I was a kid. Like, if he had had it his way, I would not have been an only child. It would have been a house full of us, which it probably should have been, because I was like, dude, you need another kid to focus on. But could you tell, like, the way that he was with you and Jeremy and Dee Dee, could you tell that he really loved kids and just had a soft spot for kids?
Absolutely. Like, he really was Uncle Bernie. I remember so I was actually doing gymnastics.
I remember that. Yeah.
And they incorporated it into the show, but I would have my actual competitions on the weekends, and Bernie came to one of my competitions. Mm-hmm. And that was just so cool to have him there. Cause it's like, yeah, we work together, but we don't hang out.
Right.
To have him take time out of his time off from working to come and support me at my gymnastics competition, that just shows like who he was as a person. We really were, like, I called it my second family.
Yep. Oh, that's awesome. Like, is there anything about my dad that, granted, I know you didn't know who he was, but anything that shocked you about the way that he was, that you, like, when you met him, that you may have thought he might be like this, but then you got to work with him and get to know him and realize, no, he's actually like this?
I assumed that he was going to be one of those celebrities that, doesn't interact with people, or, like the crew can't speak to him, or, but he was the total opposite. Like, so down to earth, spoke to everybody. He would provide lunch for the whole crew, and, people would be in and out of his dressing room, just hanging out and talking. And he was just a lot more real than I would have assumed. But I was pleasantly surprised.
I tell people that all the time, because even for me growing up, and like, remember like my wedding and just other events in my life where people, just couldn't wait to come. And I was like, you're going to be so bored and you're going to be so disappointed, because, the expectation that people had was that it was going to be this huge affair with all these celebrities and it was going to be these big old things. And I'm like, no, he was most happy. Like you said, food. He was big on food. So he was going to order food and make sure everybody got to eat. He's going to have his MGDs and like put on some music and everybody just chill out and just, hey, we just be here. Like, that's who he was. So I'm not surprised at all. I knew that, but I'm glad you said it, because no matter how many times I say it, it's like people really don't get it. So I'm glad you said it.
Oh, yeah. He was so cool. Like, I remember there would be days when we were supposed to be filming, but everybody would just be standing around talking to him or listening to him tell a story. And then eventually somebody would be like, all right, this is great, but we got to get back to work.
I love it. Because he used to call himself a talkologist, and he could talk, because I used to look at him sometimes. I'd like, if we had company or something, we'd be in a room, he'd be talking, I'd walk out, go do something else, come back, and I'm like, you still talking? So, yeah. About the stories, I always tell people, like, my dad spoke in parables. He always had like these sayings. Are there any things that stand out for you that you remember him saying?
I think the one that stayed with me the most is when he said, be careful when people call you a star, because stars are in the sky and the stars can fall. Yeah. So that always stuck with me, especially being in the entertainment industry, which is so unpredictable. And, one day you're on top and the next people are like, whatever happened to, so that stuck with me. And it was a good way for me to understand, like, stay humble.
Yeah. Yeah. That was one of his favorites. He used to say that I'm not a star because stars fall. Yeah. That's really good. I know you talked about him coming to your gymnastic competition. Is there any other moment that you share with my dad that sticks out to you as one of your fondest memories?
I mean, just being around him and getting to talk with him. You know, he would give advice and he would tell me, if you ever have an idea, just try it. You know, if it doesn't work, then try something else, but don't be afraid to put yourself out there and explore, because that's how you get better. And I remember this is when the real Uncle Bernie came out. So Dee Dee's older sister and I, we were good friends, and, you know, we'd always be running around the set together. And at a rap party one night, we stole a golf cart, and we were like 12 at the time. So we had no business driving anything. We were like riding around the stages, and Bernie happened to walk by, and he was like, "What are y'all doing?" He was like, "Oh my God," about it. So he made one of the production people ride with us. So we still have to have our fun, but supervised.
I love it. See, that's when he had mellowed down. So you got to meet him at a good age. You got him like when he hit 40, he was chill and mellow. If that had been like about 20, 30-something-year-old Bernie, nah. See, I grew up with 19, 20, 30-something-year-old Bernie. Oh man, I love it. So my dad was ranked number 47 on TV Guide's TV 50 Greatest Dads list. What do you think it was or is about dear old Uncle Bernie that just endears him to audiences so much?
I think that he was relatable. He said it on the show. I say the things that you want to say but can't. So I feel like he was just so real with it that people could relate to it, and it didn't matter who you were, you know, race, age. He said stuff that everybody could hear and be like, "Oh yeah, I know what he's talking about." Yeah.
Yeah. And it blows my mind. Like, I remember when he died, my mom and I were getting letters from like people in Amsterdam and Germany that were just like, "I'm all the way over here in Amsterdam, but I loved Uncle Bernie. I was so sad." And it just, you know, seeing it in real time, I understood. I can't say that I didn't understand how big the show got, but there are moments where you get to see the impact that it's had on such a massive scale, and you're just like taken aback, like, "Oh my gosh, wow!" Like, so to this day, it still blows my mind. Have you had moments like that where you're like, you knew at the time the show was going on, you knew the show was a hit, you knew you were, you know, on this really popular show and how it was impacting audiences, but like later on, did something happen that made you go like, "Man, I knew it was big, but not like this"?
Definitely people from other countries who recognize me. Like when I would travel abroad, I was in France and Scotland, and people would be like, "Aren't you from that show?" And I'm like, "Oh snap, y'all know me out here."
You didn't know, right? You are somebody, okay?
And then even to this day now, people still yelling out Nessa. It's wild that people still see the show, and I have people tell me that they've introduced the show to their children. That's pretty cool. Like new generations watching the show.
Yes. Like when people message me, I'm like, I just introduced my grandson. He's 4 years old, and I introduced him to the show, and he loves Uncle Bernie. I tear up immediately because I'm just like, wow. Yeah. You guys did something really special. You really did.
Yeah, it's timeless, really.
Yeah. Yeah, that's, because my daughter she wasn't quite 2. She turned 2 a few months after he died. So the only things that I could show her were Madagascar 2, because he was the voice of Zuba in that, and then the show. And that's how I was able to show her, like, look, your granddad was famous and this is what it was. And even she, man, to this day, it's some episodes I never want to watch again because I used to watch on repeat. Like, let's watch it again. Let's watch it again.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
What has it been like for you and your daughter to see the impact that the show has had, that he has had? Like, is it weird for you at all when people say stuff, or is it like, yeah, that's my dad?
Her experience is different from mine because he was already famous when she was born and she was a baby. So she was really like, yes, my granddad is famous. And you know how kids are. They tell all your business. So she was, like I said, especially once she really grasped, oh, that's my grandfather's voice. Oh, that's my grandfather on TV. So when we would go places, she would go, hi, I'm Jasmine, and I'm Bernie Mac's granddaughter. He's famous. He's really famous. Have you ever seen the Bernie Mac show? And she would just start going on telling like the whole business. Like at one point she was even like, I'm going to be famous like my granddad. And I was like, oh, okay, that's fine. For me, it was different because he wasn't famous when I was a kid. Like he started working to, his comedy career when I was a kid. And then he became famous as I was growing up. So by the time he was starting to become famous, I was almost out of high school. Like I remember when Friday came out, I had graduated from high school by that point. And it was exciting, but it was weird because there would be all of these like stair step moments that would happen that we would feel like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing in your career. Wow. And then something else would happen. And it was like, oh my gosh, this is the biggest thing in your career. Like I remember when Def Jam happened, and we went on a cruise and everybody on the cruise was walking up to him. I ain't scared of you, mother. And we were like, oh. And we're talking like not just black, because I was used to Black people knowing him, and especially being from Chicago, I was used to him being locally known. But we're on a, international cruise, and now we have white people. Now we have foreigners. I ain't scared of you. And we were like, oh my gosh. And I remember being super excited when he did Life, because I was like, you're in an Eddie Murphy movie. Oh my God. Like, do you understand? And then once he got the show, I think I was in my 20s. And that was just wild. I remember we were sitting around one day like, my gosh, like, I know you said you were going to be rich and famous one day, but you got your own show. You are really rich and famous now. Like it was just wild. And it was a little hard to take after he died because I was so hurt, and he died right at the height of his fame. So the show had just went into syndication. Then he had Madagascar, Soul Men, and Old Dogs. No, not Old. Yeah, I think that was the name. Old Dogs with Robin Williams and John Travolta. All three of those were set to be released. So everywhere I went, it was either a bus or a billboard or a commercial was showing it. And as wonderful as it was and still is that he was so beloved and people knew him, at the time I couldn't really appreciate it. It was like, it was too much. And it just felt like I was being taunted by life. Like, oh, in case you forgot, Your daddy's dead. Oh, here, let me give you another reminder. But now I'm at the point where it feels really good. It still kind of blows my mind because it's been 15 years. And at this point, you know, like I tell people, I understand that he was beloved, but you know, for me, I get how important he is for me because he's dead. But for other people, 15 years later to still care about him and talk about him like that. Like nobody is like, it's been 15 years. Can we talk about something else? Everybody is still just like, no, I love him. I want to talk about him. So that blows my mind. I wind up crying a lot because I'm just so overwhelmed and happy by it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I can only imagine how that time, like that fresh moment was, because I know for me, I only got to experience him for a very short time in the grand scheme of things. And people would still come up to me and they would do his voice, and it would at that time it would make me really uncomfortable. And I didn't know what was the appropriate reaction, because in my head I'm like, it's too soon, please, like don't do that. But I couldn't outwardly be like, hey, knock it off.
Yeah.
Well, so it would just be like,
yes, that awkward. Like mine was, people would come up to me and say, I know you hurt, but you're not the only one that lost him. We lost him too. And I understand the nature of what you all do, that, you know, people, they watch you every week, you know, and now on streaming, they watch you every day if they want to. So they feel like they know you. And I understand how important fans are to what you all do. But that used to run me hot because I was like, ma'am, you didn't even know him. Like, please don't sit here and tell me that you are comparing you having to watch, you know, a celebrity that you happen to enjoy their work die with me having to watch my father die. Please don't do that. Like, yeah, it was a bit much. And like you said, I didn't want, like, I can't go off on people because then it's like, man, Bernie Mac daughter just went off on, you know. But at the same time, it was just like, oh, boy, okay, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very fine line between appreciative and cringe.
Yes. That, I love that. That is such a good way to put it. Speaking of that, I know, you know, because I can only imagine what this is like for you. Everybody assumes that your character Vanessa was based off of me. I was nothing like, people laugh. If there was anybody, I was always more like Jordan. And knowing you and your family, you're nothing like Vanessa. How has that been like? Because I'm sure people just assumed you, because you played her so well, that was it difficult getting people to realize I am not Vanessa, I just portray Vanessa on television?
It was very difficult, especially as a teenager, when I'm like still figuring out who I am, being compared to this character. It was frustrating because people would come up and be like, you are just so ungrateful, and how could you act like that? And I'm like, it's
in the script, lady. It's in the script. I'm supposed to do that, okay?
Yeah. And then now I take it as a compliment because it lets me know that I was doing my job well. But when I was younger, I was screaming for my own identity.
Child. Yeah.
Yeah. Even like a little bit now, people, you know, still identify me as Nessa. And I'm like, I'm Camille. But
Camille Winbush, okay?
But I try to take it with a grain of salt, you know, like it was a great show. It has clearly a lasting impact, and I'm grateful for that. And I know who I am, and the people that are important also know that.
So speaking of that, I got to ask you about OnlyFans, because I remember when you announced it, and I remember I was getting DM'd about it. Like, you gonna let Nessa do this? And I was like, first of all, her name's not Vanessa. Second of all, she's a grown woman. What you think to do? Like, huh? What is it? And for you and Didi, I remember like people Bernie rolling over in his grave, and I was like, y'all do know Bernie was a character on a TV show, and Bernie the man was not. The girls had parents. He was not their father. Like, so I know how I felt. What was that like for you?
Well, it was frustrating because, again, I am my own person. And, to me, I'm like, if my mom and dad are cool with it and I'm cool with it, then y'all can just let that go.
You could have been like Didi was just like, fuck all of y'all.
Right? I was like, well, she's not wrong. Right? No, she's not.
Concise to the point. Hey, look.
But I mean, my experience with Bernie, he let us be who we are. And it was also incredibly insensitive to even say something like that. Like, to bring it up in that way was just like, y'all are just cruel for no reason.
I have found that people like to use him to project their own beliefs. So if you're doing what they think you should be doing or what makes them happy, Bernie's so proud of you. Oh, he's smiling down on you. Oh, he's so proud. And then the second you say or do something that they don't like, what would Bernie think? Oh, Bernie is ashamed. He rolling over his grave. And it's just like, one, even if he were alive, none of us are obligated to live according to his standards and views. You, like you said, you are a grown woman with your own life. And if your own parents were okay with it, why you bringing my co-star into this?
Right.
Right. Like, why? Yeah, it was, again, because I can only imagine what it felt like for you. It wasn't even me. And the DMs and tags that I was getting, I was like, why you put me in this? She grown. They were like, what you want me to do? Right. So, yeah.
And like, it's just people put you in a box because they think they know you. And when you don't do what they want, and all of these things that they praised you for are suddenly bad.
Yep. They love to put you on a pedestal just to turn around and kick it from under your feet. My dad would always say, he would say the fans are the best part of this, but they can also be the worst part. Yeah. For that exact reason, because once they love you for this particular thing, they don't want to let you lose from it. And the expectation is you're supposed to be whatever that thing is forever. And it's so unfair. And then they treat you as if you don't have a right to not like that because you're privy to, money and circumstances that most of us can only dream of. So it's like, how dare you complain? Yeah. Which little, yeah. So it's interesting. Were you able to get out of that box moving from the sitcom to The Secret Life of an American Teenager? Or did you have difficulty with people embracing you in that role because they couldn't stop seeing Vanessa?
That transition was a little easier, I think, because the role was pretty mild in comparison. So I still had people that were like, Oh, Nessa done changed school and blown up. Right?
No, they was black because you know black people are undefeated. Oh gosh.
But that was a bit easier to navigate. I think now the biggest challenge is getting people to acknowledge that I'm 33 years old and not still 14-year-old Vanessa, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's a even just from going from a child actor to acting in adulthood, because folks are so used to hearing like the tragedies and pitfalls of child acting. What was that like for you? Because I know you probably get people like, you just was so good. I never heard nothing bad about you. Like, do you get that a lot?
I do, but it's funny, like since I've been on OnlyFans and in comparison to what you see on Instagram, like what I'm doing is nothing, but people will now use that as like, oh, you were so wholesome and such a great role model until. So I've learned that people will find any excuse they can to try and knock you down. So,
and I think especially for women, there is this, and Black women on top of that, there is this need for us to be everything to everybody in spite of what our heart is calling us to do. And it's like we're only allowed to be this one thing, wholesome and, you know, pure and nurturing and pristine. And if you step outside of that, it's like, oh, well, now you're just no good. Like, what? Yeah, how good are you now?
Yeah, people would be like, I'm so disappointed. This is not who you are. I'm like,
you don't know who I am. Oh my gosh. So in saying that, because you are now, what, 33 now?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Who is 33-year-old Camille?
33-year-old Camille is leaning into knowing that I can't please everybody, so I gotta take care of myself. All my life, I've been conditioned, especially in the acting world, to mold myself to whoever I needed to be to get the job or to impress the right people. So I realized that I've never really been just myself. So now I am learning who I am, what I like. I'm learning to say no, which is a major thing. And it's been so hard and I'm still working on it, but I'm happy with who I am becoming. I still don't know who I am quite yet, but I like the direction I'm going in.
You don't know how good, like my heart feels so full hearing you say that, because I'm 45 and it has taken me to my 40s to get to that place, because before that I was my father's daughter, which was like a huge thing hanging over my head. And then I became my daughter's mom, and it was in my adult life, there's never not been a moment where I didn't have to take care, you know, of someone and prioritize someone else. And I got to 40 and was tired and exhausted and just like, I can't keep living like this. And so to hear you say it at 33, I am all like, yes, please get it. You at 33, you are like, no, I'm learning to say no. You know how huge that is?
I didn't realize how much of an impact that would have on my entire life and how hard it is too.
Yes. Especially like you said, when you've been conditioned your whole life to say yes, like you said, to be the good girl. That was my thing. I was conditioned to be the good girl. So when you're conditioned to be the good girl, and that the good girl is the one who pleases everybody, you say yes, you don't want to disappoint anybody. You're just like, yeah, to learn how to say no. Because you tell people no, and all of a sudden you just become the villain, like the worst villain. So all like, you said no? What? yes. And it's scary at first. Was it scary to start telling people no? Because I know for me, it was like, with all due respect, and then I got to give them all these excuses. It's just no. I'm only saying no because blah, 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 blah. Like it, as opposed to just standing firm in no. Did you go through that?
Oh yeah, I would have to rehearse. Like I was like, okay, I'm gonna say this, and then I'm gonna explain why I said that, and I'm try to make a compromise of okay, I can't do that, but I can do this. And my anxiety was through the roof.
I remember there was a moment I had to tell somebody that who I hold very dear to my heart. And it wasn't even that I had to tell her no about something between me and her. It was just having to set a boundary about something that she was doing that I didn't want to be a part of. And I was in my counselor's office like, okay, like I think it took me 3 counseling sessions to finally work up the nerves to like, okay, I'm going to say this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And like you said, I was like driving to her house. I was in the car like, okay, it's not that it's you. I'm not mad at you. Like I was just going through like this whole rehearsed thing. Like, yeah. Oh gosh. But I am so proud of you. Just again, at 33 to know to say that and do it. Because I think a lot of times we don't realize you don't have to, like we think if we're afraid to do it, then somehow that makes us weaker. But you can do it afraid. You can be afraid while you're saying no. Your voice can shake and crack. No, excuse me. No, like, but you can still say it. So I am so proud of you. That just does my heart so good. Wow. Y'all, I want y'all to accept Camille as a grown woman. She has grown up. Look at her with her beautiful, fantastic self. She's not Nessa. She just portrayed Nessa very, very well. Yes, indeed. Okay. So winding down, I had to bring it full circle and come back to my dad. As we talked about, he lives in the hearts of his fans everywhere, like probably for many, many years to come. I know how I remember him. We know how his fans remember him, but how do you remember him?
I remember him as a man full of wisdom that he was generous enough to share with everybody. Some people, when they make it big, then it's like, well, I made it. Good luck to you. But he was just so giving of his time and his energy and the knowledge that he had gained. And I will appreciate that not only in my career, but in just life. He was a great storyteller. I was always so impressed with how he could just command the room.
Oh my God, me too. The way that he could just, I always tell people, he was that type. He walked into a room like, here I'm is, and everybody was just like, it's like, even when I used to watch him perform, I always watch the audience, and I'm a nervous Nelly. Like I don't have that thing that he has. I tell people all the time, my completely useless superpower is that I appear far more confident than I actually am. So I would just marvel at how he would walk onto a stage and just command. I mean, from the second he walked out to the time that he left, even when he would get hecklers, which after a while, he didn't even get hecklers anymore because people like his reputation for like, man, if you try to heckle him, that's going to be a rap. So just watching that, like I'm with you on that. It just used to blow my mind. Like, how do you do that? Like, how do you have that?
Yeah, it was just so cool to see. Like, even he wouldn't even be doing anything. Like, he'd just walk in the room and it was like, oh, I was like, wow, that is so cool. How do you get like that? I walk in and I'm like, you guys,
like me, that's me. I walk in like, hey, and then I go find my spot in the back. But yeah, he just come in like, what's up, you squares?
Yeah. But it was just so genuine. Like he was not trying. That's just who he was.
always, just know that was always, as far back as I can remember in my life, that is always who he was, even in his young days. That was just him. Yeah.
That in itself is just like, so cool.
Yeah. Amazing. I have enjoyed my time with you, Camille. I am just so proud of the woman you have become and are becoming. And tell us what is next in store for you.
I actually am beginning to explore my other interests outside of acting. I've always felt in a way obligated to keep pursuing acting because that was my box and I felt like I had to stay in it. But now I'm exploring other business opportunities. I love interior design. I love making pottery. So see what I can turn that into.
I love it. I'm so excited for you. Love you. Thank you so much. My thanks to all of you all who are watching and or listening. And I'm gushing over here. Like it's so wonderful to see you, to share with you, to reminisce with you. Thank you so much, Camille. Thank you to all of you all. My name is Janice McCullough, also known to y'all as Bernie's daughter. And as my daddy before me told y'all, I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. Till next time, who you with?